View on dashboard. Let's pull this over here. I think we're live.
I think we're live.
I think we're live. The YouTube's dashboard says the internet can totally see you now. To stop, use your encoder.
All right, it sounds about right.
All right, so all this stuff is correct. Let me enable the chat.
It also says standby in the corner of our screens. I don't know if you noticed that.
It does not in mine. All right, so I can't see the chat in this little dashboard, but I can see the chat over here. Rick Crespo says, "You're live," with 4 exclamation points. Hi, Rick. How you doing?
All right. All right.
Why is the chat disabled in this other little thing over here? Whatever. I'll just I'll have
to
watch it.
It's live. Inception.
Yep.
I can tell it's live. There you go.
All right. Let me like copy the link for it's probably like a 10-second delay. Let me try and find this link and give it to Kevin so he could post it. Finally. God, we were only 1 minute late.
Come on. Come on. Well, cool. If I put my phone up, I can see the whole chat.
Isn't it on your screen though?
No, it says it's disabled.
So. Oh, weird. Oh, you can see the whole chat. Yeah, okay. But you can see the video though on your screen.
Oh yeah. Okay. But then I'll just have the comments over here and we'll just go from there.
All right, sweet. I'm gonna pop them out and then close the dashboard. There we go. That's way better. All right, guys, this is the first time we've gone live in like probably 3 years. So give us a second here. Trying to figure some of this stuff out. Also, of course, had to change something with the software. All right, let's do it. Welcome to BrotoGP. This is another tech tape. It's been probably a year and a half since I recorded a tech tape, you know, ignoring the writing analysis videos with Dennis. But if you're watching live or on YouTube, as you can see, Kyle Wyman is here.
I'm here. It's happening.
It's happening. The heater in his house is not working, so he's gonna freeze his ass off. But we're gonna talk a little bit about some motorcycles and answer some questions. Hopefully, mostly tech questions. I think. What were you gonna say?
We already have a stupid question. Did Kevin let Kyle borrow his flannel? No, this is mine. It's actually the Harley Davidson flannel. If you look very closely.
Wait,
got a lot of undercover Harley Davidson swag in this house.
Let's say DMC, Davidson.
HDMC.
Oh, HDMC. I got it. I can't see the H. That's what it's funny that we bring up flannel and heater's not working because I feel like Kev's house is always freezing as well.
Yeah, it's a brand new house. Furnace has never worked since they built it.
Well, you moved in the summer, right? So it was no issue?
At the end of the summer. So they built the house in July in Tucson. So they're probably like, all right, let's test the heat. So they turn the furnace on and it's blowing hot air. It's like, oh, must be working. I can only imagine.
Oh, man. All right.
There's a whole tech tape right there.
Yeah, a whole tech tape on furnace repair, brought to you by the guys that only know about motorcycles. All right, let's see. Where should we start? So I'm gonna group. I essentially got questions off of our Facebook group, the private one that you can join just by saying join, and then Kev will probably approve you. And the Instagram post that Kev put out on the BrotoGP Instagram page. And I've kind of grouped them into categories because there were like 17 questions, but we'll answer them in like 6 or 7 spurts. So I don't know. What do you want to start with? You want to go like riding technique, motorcycle?
Let's jump in. Just pick one. I can't see them, so you just.
All right, let's start with riding technique then. So I think all I gotta do is like move this up to the top. Oh man, I'm like bad at this. Okay, there's one of them.
I wish I had Jeopardy music.
No, I should not. I should not do that. Yeah, I didn't think that this was going to take as long as it is, but it is. I'm sorry.
We'll
right.
answer a question on the feed while we're waiting.
All
Kyle,
right,
what
I
do you
got
think
it.
of the new V4 Superleggera? Enough carbon? Yes, enough carbon. A lot of carbon.
A lot of carbon.
A lot of carbon. All right, what do you got?
Oh wait, please press send to live to. Oh, sweet. Okay, now they're on the stream. All right, so we got two questions here about riding technique. So Zach wants to know essentially a rider's position on the bike is the easiest way to affect its balance. Is there a line where it becomes detrimental if crossed up? I'm assuming he means like when you're hanging off kind of the wrong direction. Why don't riders move as far forward as possible for wheelies or as far back for braking? And I mean, I can say that I definitely try and do all of those things, but I don't know. What do you got here, Kyle?
Well, I mean, I definitely why don't they? Well, I mean that I would say that they're trying to, right? But there's so much force, especially like on a superbike or a MotoGP bike. Like when you're braking, all that weight's gonna go forward. You're trying to hold yourself back, trying to brace yourself against the fuel tank, which is why we see all these custom fuel tank shapes. Like no two are the same in MotoGP, and it's starting to get that way even in MotoAmerica now. Like last couple of years, Garrett and Cam had two different Yamaha R1 fuel tank shapes. So as far as like being a little bit crossed up, yeah, I mean the whole idea is that you hang off to the inside so you can have less lean angle.
Well,
It's really it.
there's some schools of thought that say like don't hang off too far because it's too much work and it could slow you down because you're like focusing on something else, right? Like some newer riders may get scolded, for lack of a better word, for hanging off too far. But if we're talking about a professional athlete, they're going to do everything they possibly can to go faster. And if that means you have to be, like Jorge Lorenzo, and you have to train an ungodly amount to be able to hang off that far and use that to your advantage, you're going to do it. But I mean, for me,
let's throw a caveat in there because it's like, okay, some people hang off more, some people hang off less. But when, at what part of the corner? That's really the biggest thing, is because if you're hung off too far in the middle of the corner, you don't have any more adjustment left to stand the bike up on the exit, right?
Yep,
so
very true.
And I've been in that position for like 1 year of my career. I was hanging off too far mid corner. I was disconnected from the bike. I couldn't really feel the bike underneath me because I didn't have like a good like contact point with the fuel tank and like through my core and the lower body. So like, yeah, you get to a point where the bike's just kind of tracking, but you're not really getting the thing to dig and change direction. So like if you look, and I changed my style quite a bit, like as we went from like 2015 to 2017, and actually getting more and more upright on the bike with my upper body mid corner, so that I had more adjustment to stand the thing up on the exit. That was a big change.
And that's the thing, that as a pro athlete and someone that rides consistently, you can notice when you have something that's detrimental to your riding and your speed, right? Like identify that, fix it, and go faster.
Well, I mean, that stuff takes time though to fix,
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, you can identify it, but it's like, man, you just have this muscle memory built. I think JD Beach talked about how he changed his body position, went slower for like 6 months, but it ultimately projected him further, So it's those things that you pick up along the way.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm jealous of those riders that kind of just go to the track and get private instruction right away because they don't learn as many bad habits as someone like I rode on the track for essentially 5 years before seeking private instruction. And the second I went, the instructor was like, you got to stop doing this, this, and this. And I was like, oh, but how? Like, I've been doing them so long. And he's like, just now, just do it now.
I mean, that's really one thing we talk about at the school too. It's like, okay, you've identified the problem. Now, how quick you're able to fix it is really up to you. How much focus are you going to put on? How what's your willingness to be uncomfortable? Because anytime you change something, especially with the body position stuff, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Even in situations where I was hanging off too much and I had to get more upright, it was uncomfortable at first.
Well,
But
and
ultimately,
that's like the definition of trying to go faster. Like you have to push your comfort, otherwise you're just going to go the same exact speed, no matter what it is. So, all right, let's move on to the second one here for riding technique. Brian Woody is struggling to get from side to side quickly for transitions and smoothly enough to not upset the bike. Are there any secrets, or is he better off sacrificing the first corner a bit to be in better shape for the exit? He has a little extra question here. Do I half-ass two things or whole-ass one thing?
you want the truth? You whole ass two things. Honestly, it's the sport is physical, and it gets exponentially more physical the faster you go, the
Yep.
more force you're trying to deal with. So when it comes to transitions and getting across the seat, like going from right to left in a chicane or something, if you're unable to do it smoothly, a lot of times that means that you're almost like pulling yourself across the seat with your hands and putting input into the bars that you wouldn't normally be. Why are you shaking your head, Rob?
I'm thinking of the back stretch at Barber 2 years ago for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
towards the end of the race, the end of a super sport race. It's a long freaking race, and you just get
Yeah.
there and your legs are dying because you were trying to use them the whole race. Your arms are like your whole body is tired, and you're coming to these fast transitions, and you got to go left to right real fast. And yep,
Let's.
just pulling on the
I mean,
bars. Like, stop pulling on the
right.
bars, Robert. You gotta not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you got to push and pull a little bit, like especially in situations if there's a chicane or a transition that you're not on the brakes for, you're actually not putting weight forward. You're going to have to push and pull on the bars because you're not going to be able to compress the forks, get the thing to change direction. But the biggest input is going to be doing almost a squat and taking your weight from one side of the seat to the other. You're not scooting across or shuffling, trying to pull yourself. You're doing a squat miniature, not like you're coming all the way off the seat, but you're not sliding across. You're actually just, especially in situations like that, fast transitions, like my ass isn't even touching the seat.
Well, I mean, it's near a one-legged squat because you're really only able to push yourself over with the outside leg. It's a pain in the ass, especially with the bike already leaned over.
And talking about like putting weight through the inside, like as you transition over to one side, putting weight through the inside peg, but the outside leg into the fuel tank. That's why like having tank grips is such a big deal. So I pull the bike with my outside leg at the same time. So
I've got to the chat thing flagged your whole ass two things. So yeah, we'll do that one. Actually, all right, last little bit here from Ruben in the chat. The screwdriver technique doesn't always work for me. Pointing my finger doesn't always work for me, a la YCRS. What can you recommend so you're not breaking your wrist? That's a tough one. Do you use the screwdriver technique?
You have to.
Yeah.
Have to. I mean, when you look at 100% of the MotoGP grid, 100% of the Moto2 grid, and 100% of the Moto3 grid, there's not really another way to do it. Nobody is kinking their wrist mid-corner. Everybody's got a straight wrist. They're allowing their fingers to go to the outside. So you have to get a hold of that screwdriver grip. And it was one of those things, like for a couple years, now we can go back to another adjustment I had to make, right? So 2011, 2012, I was racing XR 1200s, the Harley Davidsons. So they have very upright bars, they're very straight bars. So I never had to really use that screwdriver grip because I was always having a little bit more straighter wrist. I get on a Triumph the next year, and now I look at all my pictures and my body position. I'm hanging off, and my elbow is getting stuck between my knee and the bike. And I couldn't, like,
what?
I'm leaned over and my elbow's getting stuck because I didn't have the screwdriver grip. So I found out how to get my wrist out in front of my knee, get that grip going, and it fixed it. But it took me months and months and laps of deliberately working on specifically just that to get there.
So I guess that just to me points that my elbows aren't low enough. My whole upper body is still up because I'm not really forced to use the screwdriver technique because that elbow's not down there. So I can still I can still turn the throttle reasonably well. I should probably also get on the gas harder. Maybe I'll find issues there without it. Let's see what else is in the chat. Now we'll move on here. All right. So Zach and Brian, I hope that helps you out a little bit for your writing technique. Obviously reach out in comments on the video on YouTube too, and we'll try and help you out. Let's move on. Let's hide.
I got a really good one in the comments.
Go for it.
Okay, racing a leader bike.
Oh, I love it.
Can you go through the motions of correctly squaring up the turn so you can have more time on the gas on the meat of the tire? I'd like to try this instead of higher corner speeds. All right, this is perfect because you're onto something that is really, really good to think about, because corner speed is so not a term that I think about, especially on the big bike. Moto3 bikes, Junior Cup bikes, that's about all that I'm really thinking about mid corner speed. But it's not about how fast you are mid corner, it's how fast you are to that point and how fast you get away from it. So you're onto something perfectly there, because the idea, especially on a big bike, is let's maximize what it does well. What does a super bike do well? It stops really well and it accelerates really well. So if we're hanging out on the edge of the tire throughout the middle of the corner and carrying all this mid corner speed, it's literally like we go to tracks where, let's say, let's use Barber as an example. Turn 5, super tight, right? Slow corner.
Yep.
I'm slower than most club racers in the middle of turn 5. Like if you held a radar gun in the middle of turn 5, I guarantee you I am slower by a few mile an hour in the middle of the corner.
But only for a split second.
Right, but I got to that point, respected it, let the thing slow and turn so I can get it picked up and get away from it.
Well, it's you have to accomplish the turn in a way that is most optimal, and because you're going so much faster, you're probably able to accomplish less turn early on. So then you slow down more, accomplish more turn there, and then accomplish less on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's
a bigger radius on the way in to have a tighter one on the inside and then a bigger on the exit, instead of this medium-sized radius all the way through.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and like, I guess there's a slight caveat here, right? A beginner track day rider will have very, very slow mid corner speed, very, very slow apex speed, and they will have to bring that apex speed up. But the second you've made it to like expert club racer, that shouldn't be something really that you're working on. Like if you can drag knee in pretty much any corner that you want, don't focus on corner speed, focus on the rest of it.
It's literally the biggest thing that holds people back from going from like novice to expert, or like mid pack expert to front pack expert in club racing, is they're just trying to go fast everywhere. And you have to respect what's happening in the middle of the corner to pick up that last bit. You can get to a certain point, and what happens is people just start picking up the gas too early, trying to carry mid corner speed. They start crashing. They go backwards because of their confidence, or they quit because they're out of money or they're hurt or whatever it is, you know?
You're describing my first year as an expert club racer. How convenient.
Hey, trust me, I was there too, you know?
Yep.
One day I crashed 3 times in the same corner when I was a novice.
What corner?
2008. I don't remember the number, but it was at Grattan down the hill.
No idea where Grattan is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since we'll finish up one more as far as writing technique here, and you actually already answered this one on the Facebook comment. Clint Hansen, talk about quick steer that gets bandied about online by so-called gurus. Good job using the term so-called. Most of these people will say either trail brake or quick steer. However, it seems to me that a quick stab of the bars, well, with an unloaded front tire, is a recipe for a crash.
Indeed.
Yes, that is absolutely true. It is a recipe for a crash. That is
right.
also why I crashed so much my first year as an expert club racer.
I'm going to say this too. Anybody who calls themselves a guru in motorcycling is like, there's not a single person, like, if they're talking about racing on a racetrack and they've never worked at least in the MotoAmerica paddock, like, there's a reason. Because if you're into racing and you want to work with professional riders and you're good enough to do so, you would find a way to be there. So this kind of goes to the whole idea of, like, pick your voices you're going to listen to. Obviously, instruction is best if you pay for it, but try to get a qualified opinion, like people who go very quickly and don't crash a lot. You don't want to listen to the guy who hauls ass but is always on the deck. And then you don't want to listen to the guy or gal or whoever it is that is never falls down, perfect apexes, but also not the quickest, right? Listen to people who go quick, don't fall down. Quick turn. Is that what is it? Quick turn?
Quick steer, but quick turn is
quick
also
steer.
thrown around a lot.
Sounds pretty catchphrasy and not a pair of words you'd ever hear out of a professional rider's mouth. This is not the language of a professional, if that makes sense.
I mean, we were just talking about how you kind of have a larger turning radius into the corner so you can go faster. You can't do that if you just throw the bike at it.
Well, quick steer is usually the term for counter steering, like a quick bar input.
Yep.
I think they call it a snap turn somewhere. And
flick it on your knee.
Flick it on your knee. So here's the thing. If you're giving up that much tire in that short of a time, like, you're never going to be able to brake and slow your motorcycle. You're just going to add lean angle, and lean angle does not equal direction change. You can damn near lean a bike over and almost go straight. It's the direction change by slowing the thing that gets you actually pointed and out the corner.
Well, the way that I look at it, if you did an instantaneous lean angle change, you have to be going your minimum speed in that corner right then. Right? That has to be the slowest you go through the corner, because if it's not, you're sacrificing speed. And if you go too fast, then you're crashing. Right? So where do we want to put that minimum speed? Do we want to put it at the start of the corner? No, because then you have to hold that minimum speed through the entire corner. It's a terrible.
This is where all these schools, like, let's say, basic rider course, MSF, in a parking lot, and they only teach 90-degree corners. Why is that?
You can kind of get
how many corners on the streets that motorcyclists like to ride have all 90-degree corners?
None of them.
Everything's more than so people are taught, go to the brakes, get off the brakes, tip in, power through the corner. Well, it's only a 90-degree corner. You can already see the exit of it. You don't have to continue turning. So then these riders get their license and they go right on the street and they get to a downhill, off camber, 180-degree corner. They get off the brakes. They get into the corner. They're taught to pick up the throttle, and the corner's still tightening.
Yeah, if you picked up the throttle, you shut out of luck.
I'll just add lean angle. I'll add lean angle and throttle at the same time.
Yeah,
and we're having real problems.
If
it's a right-hander, you're in the left lane. If it's a left-hander, you're in the gravel.
Yep. All right. We're getting flustered here. So yeah, do not do this technique, especially if you're at the racetrack and trying to go fast. But I mean, honestly, if you learned moderate trail braking and used that on the street, you'd be a safer rider, in my opinion. And yeah, ignore anyone that tells you to quick steer as a way of going faster. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. You want to grab that last one by Rumen in the chat there?
Let's see. That's during turning, do you pull opposite sides or just push the side of your counter steering? Okay, so like for the counter steering stuff, especially like initiating the turn, it happens, but it's subconscious. It's not something I think about ever.
Sorry,
It's really not.
the question was asking Kyle, do you push pull the opposite sides of the bars or just push on one side of the bars? So obviously with counter steer, you're trying to rotate the bars the opposite direction of the corner. And
My truthful
you have
answer
two
is I
hands.
have no idea. It is
I don't
because
either.
in that initial part, you break the gyroscopic force off of center, and from there the steering head has to relax and actually turn into the corner for the bike to change direction. So from there, it's all the weight going through the inside. It's especially like bar input mid corner.
Well,
There's nothing happening.
So the thing that confuses, like, I guess not confuses it, but the thing that makes it hard to know which one you're doing with the bars is if you're holding the brake and have some lean angle, you're having to fight a torque in the bars, right? The front tire will try to turn into the turn if you're braking with lean angle, and that's the opposite of counter steering. So that force exists, and so literally as you're braking, you're having to both counter steer and fight this force to get the bike to lean in. So I mean, I use both hands to do all of these
Ideally,
inputs.
you can set up the bike to be very neutral mid corner on the brakes.
You can make it feel like that force isn't there, but it still is.
Beg to differ.
Check Tony Foley's book. It's
Okay.
you can't get rid of it. It's yeah, you can't get rid of it. But yes, you can make it feel like it's not really there.
Okay. Well, check Peter Clifford's book. Just saying.
Peter Clifford's book? I haven't. That one's been sitting in my my Amazon cart for a while.
1985 holds true. I read it 2 weeks ago.
Maybe I'll just borrow it from you instead of buying it then. All right. Next question. So we're switching off a writing technique here. Garrett Nelson wants to know, I'd love to know more about the business side of things. What's the biggest expense racing in MotoAmerica? Is there prize money? How do you set up your business plan? That sort of stuff. And I must say, Kyle, you're probably the most qualified person to ask about this.
How much time we got?
Not very much. You got like 3 minutes.
No, we'll start. So biggest expense is people. And that's the way it should be. Because, I mean, you can have all the greatest stuff, the best parts, the best engines, the biggest semi and all these things. But if you don't have the right people and good people, you're not going to be able to do anything with it. So, having like two really good guys on a pretty much semi full-time kind of salary is where the majority of my budget goes. And from there, travel expenses are close second, flying guys in from all over the place on like decent flights that don't have 6 layovers. So like you get a good night's sleep before you show up to the track.
No red eyes.
Yeah, no red eyes, stuff like that. Those are the biggest expenses. In MotoAmerica Superbike, they have, and this is public knowledge, there's a premier entry, which is for premier teams who have a nice pit setup. So if you can show up and put on a good hospitality area and a good tent and have a nice wrap trailer and things like that, you get show up money. So in Superbike, it's $4,000 a weekend guaranteed.
Well, it's 2,000 a race, right? So do you have to take the grid for both races to get that?
Yes.
I don't remember. Okay.
And you have to commit to the whole season. And if like, for example, I got a concussion a couple years ago, I had to put somebody on the bike in my place. It's my team and I have that entry spot. So I had to put Chris Paris on the bike. So you're guaranteed to be there. They can count on you to be at every round. And you pay a one-time entry at the beginning of the year to be eligible for that. So like, that's a good starting point for, people who are looking to get into Superbike. And for me, I had a gooseneck trailer and a dually that got me a good enough looking area to get that premier entry and get things kind of growing from there. And if you follow me on social media, you saw I just bought a semi trailer. So I'm stepping it up for this year. And
X Supercross trailer?
Yeah, not a race trailer, but a like display trailer from the Supercross paddock. But yeah, so like I mean, what else? I mean, we could literally I could just go on because
Well,
I manage every part of this team.
so real fast, the subsidy from MotoAmerica, because that's what I see it as,
Mhm.
does not cover expenses in any way for a weekend. Like what? It's like 25% maybe of expenses for a weekend. At best, no,
No,
not even there.
not
Uh,
in
I mean,
not
well,
in
so you get
2019.
you're spending what, 3 grand on tires alone, and then
Yeah,
you're only
close to
getting.
3 grand. Yeah, like 2,800 I think is average. Like sometimes we got to mount a couple sets of reins because it's looking threatening, and then it jumps over 3 grand or something. But you can save those for the next round if you don't use them. Um, yeah, I mean the travel expenses, the fuel, um,
So
honestly, the flights are
the subsidies cover travel and race bike gas, or sorry, tires and race bike gas, and that's about it.
basically.
So you're not making money winning races, or I guess entering races in Superbike in any way, shape, or form. Like they have that same
No.
subsidy in, uh, if you're a premier entrant in Supersport.
Mhm.
And I know it helped out the guys that were more towards my level of pay if they could get premier entrant, but they're still driving a huge rig across the country and paying crew, flying crew, paying for all their meals, all their hotel rooms.
I mean, it's a good program though because it's something you can just plug into your budget and be like, all right, if I do this, I'm guaranteed this money. You know, it's not like a big purse payout where you have to, try to, okay, maybe I can, if I do this well, then I can do this many races. It's tough to do it like that. So um, they have the privateer purse on top of the premier entry that privateer teams can earn. So I've done pretty well with that too, but there's not really like there's no Ducati contingency in Superbike. I haven't had any like bonus structures with any of my sponsors. So like my desire to win is just there's no I don't get paid anymore if I finish first or sixth,
Oh,
so
oh, you don't have win bonuses with your sponsors? You haven't been able to
nothing
slide
set
that.
up.
You rather take the flat rate, huh?
Guaranteed money, right? You can budget, then you know what you have to work with.
True.
So, that's kind of the way it's been. But um yeah, every year just kind of keep growing the thing and figuring out what you can, you start with this, okay, this is what I want to do. And then you try to fill the gaps with the budget and everything. And then sometimes all right, okay, we can't only do one superbike motor. Okay, find this sponsor. Okay, all right, we got to cut this. We got to, okay, this test, we can't do this test, whatever it is, you just try to just ebb and flow the budget to come up with something.
All right. So I think this is not too hard of a transition here. It's a little bit related to you building a motorcycle. So Henry Carlson wants to know, given the recent news surrounding speculation, could you please touch on how much effort is required to get a stock superbike? I'm guessing he means like one you buy from the showroom, ready to race in the superbike class. Um, I don't know if you want to tell people what our original topic was for this tech tape.
Our original topic was about 3 hours worth of talking about all that from the whole season last year, but
Kyle
somebody
sent me
decided,
Yeah,
yeah,
Kyle sent me an email about like literally everything that happened at each round, both like in what they changed and what they were working on, what happened in between rounds, the results that he got. To be honest, Kyle, I was really sad like with like 2 rounds to go, and then it picked up a little bit.
yeah.
It's hard.
It's
It's
a
hard to
happy
read the. Yeah,
ending.
it's a good ending. Hard to read
Okay,
that though.
so yeah, we were gonna do. Somebody decided to announce that they're gonna race a Panigale V4R in the MotoAmerica Superbike class. It sounds familiar. I've seen that type of press release before, and we can go through some of this stuff if you want, but the struggle is real when it comes down to like building something. It's going to be a lot easier for a new team to take a year-old bike and do this because there are just 100 times as many parts available and data available and things that you can plan for because you can literally have a bike sitting in front of you for a year and then decide you're going to go race it. For us, our bikes showed up on March 1st, 2019. We got them in the shop on March 5th, and 3 weeks later, we were on the grid at Road Atlanta.
You're insane.
In the middle of those 3 weeks, we went and raced the Daytona 200.
Won the Daytona 200.
Yeah. So we had to get bodywork made from scratch. We had to get triple clamps made from scratch. We ordered 3 different brands of rear sets so that we could figure out what was going to be a good direction to start. We had problems with oil seals from the factory that we thought we were going to be completely SOL at Road Atlanta. We had just unbelievable last minute stuff at every round that somehow made it through. And at the end of the year, we ended up in the top 5. So it was all worth it.
You make the perfect motorcycle racer, Kyle. It was all worth it after a year's worth of effort to get that top 5.
Yeah.
Well, so I think one thing that this relates to as well is now you're going to be racing. Well, no, they'll be behind you, but there will be some stock 1000 bikes in your races this season in 2020. So I think while it's very, very difficult to build a high quality Superbike and to get a program going on a motorcycle that has never been raced before in the United States and is brand new and barely raced in Europe, you could racing like a Cowie or an R1 in MotoAmerica in stock 1000 form is a much easier prospect. You could just go buy one today from you can go buy a Cowie from Graves and race it like after they build it for you.
Well, I mean, you could race it right off the showroom floor. If you go buy a Kawasaki ZX10, you can put slicks on it and it's Superbike legal. You don't even have to put bodywork on it if you don't want to.
You need a belly pan. And you have to safety wire things
like that. Okay, but the point is that we're both trying to make, I think, is that the Superbike grid is pretty small because there's a lot of teams that feel like they have to have a full blown Superbike to jump into the series, or they would do it if this, or they would do it if that, if the rules changed, if it wasn't so expensive, if this and that and this and that. I went to Superbike in 2016 with a super stock bike, like stock motor, stock, everything. Like there were super stock teams beating me. And even though I was in the Superbike class and racing a Superbike, but I wanted to be in Superbike because that's what I knew I wanted to grow into as I went along. And then I started getting to where I started beating all the super stock guys on my Superbike, same spec. And these guys, 3 guys who finished behind me would all get to stand on the podium, and I'd be 4th, the man in the middle, not on the Superbike podium, but ahead of the whole super stock podium. But like that year and a half of like trying to figure out how to build a Superbike, that's why I'm here and I have a solid program that's like here for the long run. Is because it wasn't like, oh, I'll only go to Superbike if I get this or that or whatever. It's like, whoever's not in Superbike now and is blaming something else, they wouldn't be here anyway.
There is some allure to having the best of the best equipment when you go into a class, but I mean, anyone that goes amateur racing, you don't start with the best equipment. If you did, you get your ass lapped off as you got lapped by the guys on clapped out 10-year-old motorcycles.
Yeah.
But I wish that mentality kind of made it into what is into our series now, because MotoAmerica is in the state that it's in, right? I want to see more people out there. I want to see more support, like more teams, bring more fans, bring more money to the series, right? Like every team that shows up with a new sponsor is just more money into the paddock. I don't care if you're racing what is not the highest spec bike in the Superbike class. Hell, I mean, I've been racing an old R6 in MotoAmerica Supersport for a while now, and I mean, MotoAmerica is still very welcoming. They still love the fact that Riders Law is coming to support. We're like signing autographs and attracting more fans to the series. So it's all good. Just come and join in. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I'm pretty committed to this whole deal.
How
And
I couldn't tell.
and I make a living racing motorcycles in MotoAmerica. And on the path we were on in DMG, I would not be here if MotoAmerica didn't take over the series and fix it. So, I see nothing but opportunity in this series, and it's a shame that some people don't. But to me, it's like, well, how bad do you want to be there? I mean, that's really how I see it. It's a shame some guys are losing rides, but it's how things go. Like, teams come and go, nothing lasts forever. Now we got another team coming in with a Ducati.
But
That's
potentially
nothing but a positive.
potentially
Yeah,
two of them.
potentially two. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nothing but a positive. Yosh is gone for now, but have you seen how tied they are to HRC and Supercross?
I mean, and rumblings on Instagram about supporting racers, even if they're not a full Yosh program. Like, I wouldn't be surprised
Now,
if there are Yosh stickers on bikes in Superbike this year.
well, they are a huge supporter of Westby Racing,
Oh yeah,
and
that's
they
true,
have
huh?
been. So,
Wait, but
so
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
Westby's getting support from Attack as well, right? This year. Yeah. All right, we're getting off topic here. Safe to say the answer to this original question is it's a pain in the butt if you want to do it to the very top spec, but it can be done other ways. All right, answer another one here from the chat while I find us more. Ooh, I'm gonna do these two.
Let's see. I imagine it costs as much money as you can scratch up. That's pretty much it. Unfortunately, I'm getting to where I can scratch up more and more and more, but that's pretty much it. Spend every dollar you bring in. Let's see.
I mean, the faster you go, too, the more you just want to spend. The worst thing that happened to my racing was like winning a club race and then being like, oh, I really should buy that extra rear tire to go faster in those races, and then racing in MotoAmerica and realizing that that spending time on new tires is the easiest way to learn to go faster. It's the more time you spend on new tires, the faster you go, the more used to you get going fast. Like, don't spend time on clapped out tires until up to a point. I'm not there yet, Kyle.
That's where you win the race. You win the race on a clapped out tire.
That you do.
When are you coming back to New York Safety Track to break somebody's lap record?
I heard, isn't the safety track not very safe?
No, it's not at all. I went about as fast as I can comfortably let myself go there. I don't know what
and we race at Sonoma. All right. Not anymore. If it got repaved, would you happily go back?
No.
No? Really? Okay.
I don't know. If it was like properly repaved, like Barber repaved. Yes, it'd be awesome.
Okay.
But they need to move walls too. So
Valentin DeVries told me that Barber freshly repaved is bumpier than their bumpiest tracks in Europe. You've ridden over there. Is that true?
Oh. All right, what's the next question? Let's get it going.
All right. I got two questions about electronics, and they're not. Well, one's very specific. One's open-ended. We'll start with the specific ones. How many fuel and timing maps do you use during a race? And then the second question for that is, how aggressive with timing advance do you guys get? So I think the first part, let's open that up to all maps, because I'm sure you change other maps during a race.
Yeah, I mean, I don't change anything with fuel and timing. My three categories, if you will, that I get to change are torque map, TC, and engine brake. That's it. Torque map is just. What's that?
Yeah, does torque map adjust fuel and timing at all, or is it just demand and throttle and everything.
It's really just like throttle map, but it's based on a literal like torque output. You know, what's the max torque output that we want the engine to produce in this area? You know, whether it's corner, exit, and it's all totally customizable. So I work with my guy Marshall, and he says, all right, we want to work on turn 6. So like the exit of turn 6 for torque mapping, we're working on, you know, trying to get the thing a little bit softer, a little bit more like doughy, so I can go to full throttle and let it kind of just ramp up smoothly, like make the bike a little bit easier to ride. So like I'll have 3 different, you know, A, B, and C and torque maps I can try. Engine brake, it's like which, you know, because we break the whole track down into segments. We get corner by corner mapping, and every corner is broken into 3 separate sections. So you have entry, middle, and exit. So he's got different maps for every single data point and different input you can think of for each section of every corner on the track.
Does he have to define those sections, or does the software do it? Or
Yeah.
All right.
It's defined by distance from start to finish.
Yeah.
So when you talk about like creating a map, you know, if you're a track you've never been to on your magnetic Morelli system, you have to actually run laps first and then break it down and pick how you want to break up every corner distance wise. So it's important to be able to, you know, like get to where you can be a consistent rider, because if you're like different lines and stuff, you're going to be going different distances and changing where your sectors change.
I never thought about that.
So then traction control, pretty straightforward, up and down more or less, but it's like, okay, do I want it to spin faster before it kicks in, or do I want it to kick in later in the exit of the corner? Do I need it to spin a little bit more initially so I can get the thing, you know, there's all these little fine adjustments that make a huge difference. I saw somebody say, you know, would you be changing torque map mid-lap? Really just like, that'd be more of like a during the session change where it's like, hey, let's go out, do 6 laps, try this torque map for 2 laps, then try this one for 2 laps. And those are times when I change like torque mapping.
Do you do what Rossi does, where he has the pit board tell him like 2/3 through the race to change the map? Like, do you always change mid race?
A lot of times towards the end, but like you have to be really specific on things like that. Like if you're not dialed in to where, you know, okay, we got this map for the beginning of the race, this map for the end. If you've not even gotten to that point, then you're not going to have that option. But like a lot of times, like Marshall will say, all right, look, when you get to, you know, about 6 to go, or when you start to feel the tire, you know, the tire starts to go off, change to this engine braking. Like, because as the tire goes off, now the bike's sliding too much on corner entry. You want to feed a little bit more freewheel into it to keep it lined up. Or like, same thing, as the tire goes off, the bike is lighter. Like I need more engine braking in the beginning of the race with a heavy fuel load. As the bike gets lighter, it stops better, so I can use more freewheel and keep the thing kind of rolling through the corner. So those are some good examples of like mid-race changes that we'll do to try to keep more consistent pace.
Are you at that point now for all the MotoAmerica tracks? Or are you still going to need like significantly more effort, say at like the early tracks from the season?
The early tracks we're starting over because we didn't even have the Morelli system until after VIR.
Yeah.
So we started to get to that point in the last couple races, Jersey and Barber, and now we have to go to COTA, Atlanta, and Virginia and build our own maps, as well as the Ridge and Indy. But the cool thing about our Magneti Morelli system is it's all the same kind of software that the MotoGP team uses. So they can give us all of the distances for the segments for COTA and Indianapolis because they've raced the Ducati MotoGP bikes there.
Oh, no way.
So we don't have to build our own maps because Ducati Corsa will help with some of that stuff.
That's awesome. Someone's been to those tracks before, so they're gonna hand it over. Oh, another reason why you are loving the fact that isn't MotoAmerica going to sign like a keep the rules the same contract here with all the teams, or just promise that they're not going to change them for 5 years.
Yeah, they trying to give us like a 3-year, circulation where we can say, all right, if somebody wants to come into Superbike and make a commitment, you want to do it on a multi-year basis. You want to make sure that they're not going to go and change the rules to Motec next year, and then you got to build all new harnesses and stuff.
So I think
yeah,
the other question here was from Noah Nichols, and it was pretty much everything that we just described. What advantages does the Magneti Marelli ECU provide? What input parameters are used in the control logic? The control logic is mostly IMU, but what wheel speed? It uses your suspension potentiometers as well. Now it doesn't use those. It doesn't use the front one for wheelie.
No, it doesn't. It actually doesn't. I thought it would do that, but this particular system, that the way it's set up, doesn't use any potentiometer inputs. One thing that's really cool is it has like a little bit of like a closed loop type of feature where, if I get into a corner too hot, or I'm making a pass and I'm later, deeper, harder on the brakes, and the thing starts to step out and slide, the IMU will pick up on that kind of stuff and feed some fuel back in to keep me more in line through the corner entry.
Yeah, I mean, that's and it does that for. Well, I mean, I guess that's how like old traction control worked too, right? It noticed that something is wrong and then adjust it. So, but that's good that it's using.
We're talking on D-cell though,
yeah,
it's pretty cool because we're talking engine braking.
Noah Nichols, he did use the word torque ductor. You do not have one of those, and you're not allowed to have one of those.
I don't know what the hell that is. So
it's a live torque measurement from the countershaft sprocket. I'm pretty sure they're only in GP and definitely not allowed.
It's a calculated torque number.
Yeah, it's like a power meter for your bicycle.
Well, and here's the thing is it's really interesting, and the philosophy that we go is not like, okay, give it max power and then just TC it down to where you want it to be. It's like, well, no, let's take power out, and then we'll just let the TC and the power kind of meet in the middle. You don't want to just max the thing out on power and then have all this intervention. It's like holding the gas and the brake at the same time.
Well,
let's make.
The first way was why the CRT MotoGP bikes were so slow, and the second way is why the factory bikes are so fast.
Well, it's just torque mapping. It's like, let's just make it look. If in between these two corners, it'd be impossible to go 210 horsepower wide open in between these two corners. So let's take enough torque out where I can come out of that corner and go to flat and not wheelie or not pump or whatever else. So like, it's a common misconception that like, oh, the BSB guys, they're so awesome. Like no TC, no wheelie control, no rider aids. Well, they're still torque mapping. So like they still come out of a corner and can get to wide open. Yeah, there's not that like security blanket, but like there's a lot of help with just softening how the thing comes off the corner.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, there's even that sort of torque map help in street cars these days. Anything with fly-by-wire, it generally doesn't exactly follow what your hand or your foot is doing for the throttle. There's some adjustment there, some smoothing at a minimum. But Street Fighter ATL on YouTube wants to know where's your Wikipedia entry?
Somebody get on that for me.
I've been very tempted to make the GP and World Superbike have the Wikipedia for all the results and stuff. I need to make one for MotoAmerica because it's a pain in the butt to talk about this stuff and not being able to easily reference it all.
Yeah, somebody needs to jump on that.
Jen just Googled potentiometer. Solid. Got to know that one. Linear potentiometer. All right. We're almost at an hour. How long should we go on this thing?
I'm fired up. Let's keep it going. We got 51 people live.
All right, let's do these three super fast. I know that doesn't sound like it's going to be fast, but if I could actually like put them on screen quickly.
Hold on. Has the effect of a slipper clutch altered due to elections on braking entry?
Rider aids on like D-cell?
Okay, so with slipper clutch stuff, like once we find a pretty good setting, we keep it the same because, you're throwing an extra variable into the mix as far as like the decel with the electronics. You know, if you're just changing that stuff, then you got to redo all your engine braking stuff. So like as the clutch wears out, it'll change how the electronics work. So it's a big deal to like make sure your slipper clutch is just working consistently. Whatever setting it is, it can just work consistently. Then you can tune the electronics to work with it.
I mean, they're both tools for something similar, but yeah, it'd be silly to change two things at once. It would just throw off all your settings. Do you throw in a new clutch every weekend?
I think we're going pretty much 2 weekends on a clutch, but we check it between every session because you just can't afford to have it go. Luckily,
nice.
dry clutch pretty easy to.
Oh yeah, you don't even have to take a cover off. All right, real quick on these three. Talk about the rear brake. Can you please explain your own techniques for rear brake application on corner entry and exit? And thumb brake, thumbs up or thumbs down?
I used the thumb brake for a couple of years. It was awesome. And rear brake, I still use it at tracks like, I'm really only using it in like long braking zones where I just need a little bit of extra stopping power. But every time my data guy sees rear brake pressure on the graph, he says, quit it, because he wants to be able to tune the electronics to do it. But we haven't got to where I'm just like, I don't need it. I still want to have a little bit of that control in my back pocket, but I mostly use the thumb brake for wheelie control. And now with the torque mapping and stuff, like I don't really need to use the rear brake too much on the exit. So
do you use it over the hill at Barber? The turn 4?
No.
The electronics just keep the front end down?
No, it's absolutely the scariest thing ever. It's like every Superbike rider can attest to it. Like it's terrible, terrifying. Full front end tuck in fourth gear. No, it's no good.
Oh, terrible. Wait, so you use the rear brake more than early in the corner for actual stopping? Do you use it at all mid corner to like kind of tighten the line just a little bit or anything?
Rarely. Like sometimes I'll be on it like in the middle of turn 2 at Laguna.
Yeah, long corners.
Like I can't get to it on the right hand side, but like it hasn't been that big of a deal where it's like I gotta have it on the thumb again.
Gotcha.
So I can get to it at all times. It's just it's 0.5% of my whole kind of technique.
All right, and in comparison, I've used the rear brake 4 times on the racetrack.
You've counted?
Yeah, I can still count. I can still count. There was one pass at Laguna into the corkscrew during a super sport race, which was kind of cool, but that was an oh shit moment. There was another one at Fontana, also an oh shit moment. I used it over the hill at Barber to keep the front end down one time, and that felt great. And then I used it the very last corner. I used it accidentally the very last corner that I rode last year, i.e. when I crashed at Barber in Sunday morning practice. Yes, the foot slid forward and touched the rear brake, and I was already offline and deep, and it was terrible. You don't the easiest way to crash in a corner is make 3 mistakes at one time. Like just fuck 3 things up.
Chain of events.
Yeah. Everyone, like, I always feel like crashing is like rookie mistakes. It just so happened, like, because not to do those things. I'm not very often surprised by a crash. It's like, oh yeah, like no, I screwed up those 3 things, and there it went.
Yep. Usually makes pretty good sense. What do we got?
All right. Okay, we got 2 more sequences left here. We got some stuff about traction that I know people are gonna want to hear about. These ones are actually kind of nuts. Oh wait, I need to turn those other questions off first. Apologize for the long delay on this, everyone. I will figure out how to use this software for this stuff shortly. All right. Okay. So all these 3 are about traction.
Will you people quit whining in the comments?
What are they whining about?
People are just at each other's throats.
Ah, God, I need to get Dennis on here to be a moderator, just in the comments. Mike Falcone wants to know, what indicators do you feel about how hard you can be on the front brake? Steven Pittinger wants to know, what sensations help improve traction on drive off the corner, like throttle control, and how do you feel what's happening with the tire? And then Billy Ball also wants to know, how do you find the limits of the front tire? These feedback. Feedback is a very interesting topic on a motorcycle.
Yeah. Well, I think so. The biggest thing about, knowing where the edge of grip is realizing that you just you're not going to know inherently where it is.
You can't guess as to where it is.
You can't guess. You're not going to inherently know, like, I can squeeze it this hard. It's always about just being smooth enough to where you just kind of bump up at the edge of grip. And as you go over it, you can come back underneath it, if that makes sense. So, as far as like braking in a straight line, I mean, really, if you load the front tire correctly, you can brake as hard as you want until the rear tire comes off the ground. As you're mid corner, when you start to lose grip, you'll feel the bars start to kind of turn in, or you'll feel the thing kind of chatter. Like, if you're smooth enough, you can get the feedback from the tire to tell you, hey, like, cut it out or you're going down. The crashes that are like, I don't even know what happened, just snap, like, where was the edge of grip? It's because it's something abrupt input that just went too hard into the front tire. Same with the rear tire. Like, seen the pictures sliding the MT10 around and stuff that I posted, things like that. Like,
that was hilarious.
That is over the edge of grip, right? And that is TC off, by the way, comment people. And
nice.
Building a load into the rear tire, getting the thing spinning, and being over the edge of grip and smoking the rear tire. Like, if I didn't have a smooth hand, there's no way I'd be able to do that without high siding my brains out.
Well, and you just listed like 3 steps to getting to spinning the rear tire. You didn't say just spin the rear tire, right? Load first, apply more power, then
dude, you just whack it. You just whack it.
just like you flick the bike in, right?
No, you just whack it and you let the TC do all the work.
The thing that I feel with the front tire, like, it's like, well, if you've ridden a street bike in the rain, I feel like when you're riding in the rain, the bars are easier to turn, right? There's less feedback. You feel things are easier because you have less grip when the ground is wet. The same thing kind of happens, or at least what I feel when the front tire starts to slide, is like you're applying some input, or you're waiting. You've got the bike down there and you're kind of still holding the brake a little bit, and all of a sudden, like, things start to move in the wrong direction, and it's slow because everything just will move a little bit easier. And that, if you were smart, you applied input smoothly, you applied them correctly, or at least in the right order, then you've applied the right magnitude for the inputs, right? Like, now you maybe you're at 101% of the total amount of grip, and it'll slide and it'll come back if you drop it back down to 99. If you're, less experienced rider,
we can all do it. We can all, 45 people watching except for the one asshole, they can all do it right now. You can put your finger on the desk and you can slide your finger and you can create grip, and then you can start to feel it push and slide, and you can get that feedback, right? Like, if you just jam your finger, you're just going to lose grip. Like, that is exactly what you're getting from the tires when you're up against the edge of grip. But if you just throw your body weight at it, if you just throw stuff at it, you're going to have problems. So, like, all the inputs that you put into the bike are going to dictate the feedback you get out of it.
I guess the thing that maybe less experienced riders don't know is what inputs they need to be doing, right? And that's a much longer conversation that we can't actually go into here. But if you get good coaching, get good instruction, there's a sequence of things that you should probably be doing in order to make it to the apex of that corner with amazing speed and not sliding the tire or just creeping up on that edge of grip.
Mm-hmm.
How often there are always stories, like GP riders slide both tires into every corner. How often are you sliding the front tire in a lap?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, like, during a race or on a qualifying lap, front tires sliding, chattering in every corner.
In every corner.
If it's not, you're not near the front. It's actually it really is like that,
Yeah.
And like even in MotoGP, the guys look like they're on rails, which they are, but like the tires are they're designed to just kind of rub and grab and kind of tear over the pavement, you know? So like everything's always kind of sliding and you know, it's a matter of allowing the engine to have enough power to keep the thing turning. And because if you have too much TC or not enough power, the bike won't slide enough, and then you can't finish the corner. So,
well, and what there's that old adage that the best drive is 10% spin. Do you have a spin target?
no,
No spin,
no.
but you
Because it all changes based on this track surface. Like you're gonna have to
okay.
spin the thing harder when in a higher grip situation.
Yeah.
You know, like in the wet, it ain't 10%, right?
You-
You know what I mean?
I don't
So it's
know.
like,
I don't actually.
yeah,
That's probably the only situation where I've spun the tire that consistently is during wet
yeah,
races.
yeah.
Thankfully, it was what my last one was at MotoAmerica, so there was plenty of grip.
I'm pretty good.
Are you drinking
How do you?
LaCroix?
I am drinking LaCroix. I even cracked a second LaCroix. If
Nice.
anybody was paying real close attention. Um, how do you enjoy beer, or what is the best way to stay race ready yet still enjoying beer? Um, it's impossible. If you want to be race ready, you got to quit drinking. And I ain't drinking.
It's the off season. I saw you were on your
No,
bike today, right?
not today. It's raining all day in Tucson.
Oh, okay, I got you. I
But
like how
let's
you're.
be real about this. Like, you can't have it all. Like, if you
Mm-mm.
want to be freaking, you want to be somebody, you're gonna have to sacrifice everything else.
All right, I've got one topic left, and this one might go way too far. Um, did someone write title of Rub Sex Tape for that one? Nah, they probably should have. There have been a bunch.
I'm sure it's
Oh
coming.
shit, live Broto. Yeah, Alex Wilson, we've been here for an hour and 7 minutes. Thank you for joining
Come on.
us. Parrish wants to know, how do you determine the strong points of a motorcycle and how do you exploit them on track? Well, the first step to exploiting them is determine them. But people are really trying hard to sneak in a V4 versus I4 question for the Ducati racer.
Ain't happening. Ain't happening.
I mean, okay, so when you first rode a leader bike, or like, you know, jumped off a 600 and got on a leader bike, like how, besides you already knowing like you're probably going to have to point and shoot this thing a bit more than you would on the 600, how did you know that that was true?
Because I was getting beat.
Done.
I was getting beat. I was, literally like running into people in the middle of the corner and then getting beat off the corner. I mean, eventually you just kind of figure, all right, I got to slow this thing down and use the power and acceleration, like
Well, and
particularly if we're just talking like 600 to 1,000 stuff.
it's funny too, because like mid corner speeds are often very close. Like even me compared to the guys that win the super sport race, right? They can pass me into a corner and then I'll be there for the corner. But they got to the throttle a quarter of a second earlier. They had more direction. They were able to do it. And then the second we're not in the corner, they're 50 feet ahead of me.
Well, and this brings up a good point though, because I want to talk about this. It's not who gets to the throttle the soonest.
Okay,
It's
clarify.
who gets to wide open throttle soonest.
Yep,
Okay,
that's
so
a
like
better simplification.
if you pick up the throttle super early, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting this thing powered to the corner, and then you're on the outside of the corner, still leaned over at half throttle because you ran wide because you got to the throttle too early. Your drive's gonna be killed. And then JD Beach waits 5 feet longer to get the thing pointed. It stands it up, and he can get the wide open throttle way sooner.
Yeah, he accomplished more
So,
turning because he held that turning radius nice and tight by not getting on the gas.
yep.
That's a whole nother tech tape. All right, last set of questions here. So Eric from YouTube video 2 months ago asked me for a tech tape on how to set tire pressures, and we're not going to have enough time to go into this entire thing, so I'm going to have to do another video here. Windmill Motorsports wants to know what front tire pressure range do you use, and do you find a negative drop in direction changes with lower pressure? And then he also wants to know how hot do you set your warmers before going out on track. All related. So, all right, we'll start.
Okay.
Where should we start here? How hot do you set your warmers before going out on track?
Let's start at tire pressures. Because now I got to. Sorry.
Okay. Okay.
I'm hijacking this shit.
All right. So here's the thing about setting tire pressure. It is very dependent on the rider's skill and their ability to generate heat in the tire. Am I like the tire pressures that Kyle is going to give you, that maybe the ones that he does specifically on his motorcycle, would not work for someone their first day at the racetrack. They would not be optimal. They might still work.
I disagree.
You just all right, go. Don't tell me why you disagree. Start with how you set your tire pressure.
The tire pressure is based on what's recommended from the manufacturer.
Oh no.
And I'm not being tongue in cheek. Like literally, if you were gonna go ride my Superbike and you were a novice track day rider, I would set the tire pressures the same, because that's where the tire is designed to work.
A funny story about that. The tire pressure recommendations that Dunlop vendors give at track days is different than what they tell us at MotoAmerica events.
Why?
It's 2 pounds. I don't know why. I can
make any sense.
I can guess why.
The same tires.
Same tires.
Now, let me ask you this. Is it just the guy at the club race or the track day event? It's on their website also? Like if you're going racing, use these tire pressures. If you're a track day guy, use these tire pressures.
It's on the website. It says 21 cold, 23 hot for the rear tire. Now, there is some fudge factor here.
That has nothing to do with rider skill.
I know it has nothing to do with rider skill. There's fudge factor here, because we can argue all day about what the definition of hot means. If I set my tires to 21 cold, they'd be what, 27 on the track? They'd be 25 on the warmers. So that already doesn't work for me, and I know it doesn't work for you. If you set your tires at 23 hot off the track, that is what I've been told from the Dunlop guys at MotoAmerica, and that's generally what I run. But if I set it 23 hot off the warmers, that's also a different thing. That's not correct. It's suboptimal.
Right. So if you want to be really dialed in on your tire pressures, you got to take them as soon as you come in off the hot track. And then you have to figure out from what warmer temperature, how much growth do you get in your tire pressure from your warmer temperature to your off the track hot temperature. So if it grows 2 pounds from your 90C tire warmers, and you set it at 21 so you can get 23.
Yeah. Right?
So the idea is exactly not that there is like, oh, well, Kyle does 90C on his tire warmers and he does this tire pressure. It's like, no, figure out what the optimal recommended hot pressure is, and then try to set yourself up to get to that point with whatever you have at your disposal.
Yeah. So that's pretty much exactly what I do. I go out and practice, starting with the tire pressure that I think will get me to 23 right off the track. I come into the pits or into the hot pit. I measure the tire pressure. If it's at 23, perfect. If it's at 22, I add a pound. If it's at 24, actually, my range is between 23 and 24. Sure. And then it honestly, like,
now hold on a second, because I've got people on here saying like, okay, 24, I run 26 to 28. Well, when I'm on a Pirelli, we run 28 at Daytona.
Oh yeah, sorry, we're talking about Dunlop.
So that's what's recommended by Pirelli, right? So you have to go to for each specific tire within a manufacturer, you got to find out what the optimal temp pressure is, because that's the pressure that the tire is designed to work in the temperature range. So you're just trying to target that.
So here's why I'm of the opinion that this really is dependent on the rider's skill and their ability to generate heat in the tire. Because I mean, I've worked with like friends at track days and tried to set their tire pressure using my technique, and I mean, sorry, if you use the technique of you come off the racetrack and you put it at that target number, it's going to be golden no matter what. If you don't do that, say you're at a track day and you don't have a friend that's willing to sit there on the hot pit wall for you, or you take a slow in lap, or you can only measure them on the tire warmers, you've got to do something different, right? You got to set them off the tire warmers.
Well, I got a perfect question here. Let's just keep this more simple, because like race tires are designed to work at very high temperatures, and you have to ride at a certain pace to be able to generate that kind of heat.
Yeah.
Okay. So you wouldn't change if you can ride in that range of needing a race tire, then you want to go with what Dunlop or Pirelli or Michelin or Bridgestone recommends, right? If you don't have I had somebody, what if you're not good enough to get the tire hot enough? Well, then you want to be on like a Q3 plus or a Q4, like more of a track day tire. They're designed to work in a little bit broader range of temperature. Like if we do this all the time. I go to champ school and I put Q3 pluses on an R1. I'll go out there and I can get up to speed pretty quick because they work in a bigger range. They're still cold, and then they work really good. And then after 2 or 3 laps, because I'm riding beyond the temperature of what a Q3 plus is supposed to work in, it gets overheated and the tire gets worse.
Yeah.
Right. So like you want to ride in a tire that's going to suit your pace and the amount of heat you're going to generate. So
and
like
unfortunately, it's really hard for anyone that's not, or for anyone really, to recommend a specific tire to someone, because we don't know how you ride, we don't know how fast you are, we don't know like what you do with the throttle, what you do with the brakes, and that all matters with how much heat you can generate in the tire. Like Kyle can get a real Superbike tire up to temp faster than me, and faster than a club racer, and faster than a track day racer, right? I can generate more heat than people that are slower than me. It really all depends on your pace. That in turn also affects the tire pressure that you got to put it at, because if you're not getting the tire up to temp, you've got to adjust if you're not getting it up to the same temperature as us, you have to adjust your tire pressure. You
just have to be on a different tire. If you can't ride if you can't ride a tire into its zone of where it's supposed to work, then you got to be on a different tire.
Well, and that's the thing. There's a gray area, right? A tire may work optimal at a very specific temperature, but it will work well over a large range. And there is some crossover point, right, where a Superbike tire, even at like, say, call it 40 degrees less than its optimal temperature, may have the same amount of grip as a Q3 tire at the same temp. Right? So
sure.
So because of that, like, yeah, a C group rider, new to track days, first, second, third time there, Q3. I think everyone on the planet can agree to that.
Well, yeah, because what happens is you're going to get way more grip out of the Q3 or even a street tire than you will a slick. Because if you don't get that race tire into that range, you've got worse grip than a cold street tire.
But what about, okay, so here's where it gets sticky. A group track day rider, like not as fast as a novice club racer, but within 5 seconds lap time. Slick or street tire?
Like within 5 seconds of what?
Of like a mid-pack club racer.
I mean, here's the deal. I can go like literally 4 seconds slower on Q3s than I can on Superbike slicks. So
yes,
to get within 4 seconds of Superbike times, then you can spend all that extra money.
You can. I can't. I can't get within 4 seconds of this.
Well, I mean, that's the idea, though. Like, I see a lot of guys just like slick, new tires, new slicks, instead of just investing in their technique. And like, I can ride an FC1 around in A group at a track day and be typically like the fastest guy. because it's just technique. It's just how you put the inputs in. Like you can make a Q3 work so well if you load it properly. And it's just, there's so much to it.
I mean, I think the thing with tires specifically is it gives you that, not that fudge factor, but it gives you a little buffer, right? You a less experienced rider, maybe more prone to mistakes, can't load things correctly. So if they ride on a tire that has more grip, it's gonna keep them off their head a little more often than a lesser tire. But at this, I mean, at the same time, though, we just said if you're a C group rider, your first time at the track, it might not be the best idea. And this, and going back to pressure and temperature, this is all dependent on the weather and the track. Like if we're talking about uh, summer Arizona or the Central California track day where it's 105 degrees outside and the track temp is 160, throw on a slick if you're in the intermediate group because the tire's getting hot no matter what. If we're talking about a winter track day where it's freezing cold, maybe I'll run the Q3. I mean, and we both riders might be safer on a street tire, a high performance street tire, than we would on a slick, especially if we're doing a track
That's
day and not
that's
racing.
the interesting part is sometimes we have these sessions morning warm up where it's like 45 degrees or 50 degrees and your tires are on the warmers. You're set at the same tire pressure because you're still trying to achieve the same target. If you don't go out there and get up to speed real quick, you could fall out of that temperature and not be able to get yourself back into it.
It'll take a lap of putting around is going to
Yeah.
cool your tire
Yeah.
off. Like even the guys that for track days will go out and they'll sit there like waiting for 10 minutes for the session to start. You just lost 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit in your tires. Like especially if there's wind. If there's wind, you're losing a significant amount of heat, and you just almost negated the fact that you have tire warmers. So it's like all this stuff is a moving target. Setting tire pressures is a process that everyone needs to kind of figure out what works for them. You're shooting for a specific hot target on the track. And unfortunately, there are probably 5 different ways that you have to get there that depend on you, your riding, the track, the temperature, the weather, all that stuff. I mean, even what I do at a cold MotoAmerica event is different than what I do at a hot one. I mean, honestly, I struggle at the cold MotoAmerica events with tire pressure because it's more difficult to be consistent with it. All right, we've gone. Oh yeah, Kyle, you probably do this. Do you probe your tires coming off the track? Check the carcass temperature.
We don't, but Dunlop is always there doing it,
Yeah,
and they give us the data that they get. So like they'll probe it for temperature and like they'll use a durometer as well for like how soft is the inner carcass. You know, how much flex is it getting? Making sure that nobody's got a bad tire. Quality control. You know, anytime a superbike rider comes in, they're always checking everybody's.
I love it. Like when they roll by sometimes or they roll by on the grid before the race, and sometimes they'll ask you like what you've been running, and oftentimes I'll go up to them and like talk to them after sessions, and I'll say something like, oh yeah, I was doing this and I kind of was struggling with the wear, and they go, yeah, we saw, yeah, I know. They're paying attention. I mean, there's a reason why. Yeah, there's a reason why Dunlop is supporting MotoAmerica in there, right? They're doing development on their tires and they're paying attention. They're using all the racers to work on their product, making sure that we're getting the most out of it
Really
too.
interesting is a sponsor of mine. He had an R1 and he let me ride his bike, and he was getting a whole lot of tear on his rear tire out of Indy here in Arizona. And he asked me to ride his bike for a few laps, and I went out and rode it and put 3 or 4 laps on it, and came in, and the tire was all smooth and had no more tear. And he's like, that is just amazing. How is that even possible? Well, it's because I'm generating more heat and putting that tire into the zone where it's supposed to work. So
one of my first track days at that I ever experienced tearing was at Chuckwalla, and it was like the second week Chuckwalla was ever open, and it rained for the second session. So this is like the classic case of things that destroy tires, like new asphalt, not rubbered in. the track got cold because it had rain on it and then dried off, and you're dealing with a B group track day rider or a slow A group track day rider at the time, right? Like I could put just enough stress into the tire to tear the rubber off, but not enough to generate heat to make it sticky and actually make it work well, right? Like the thing about tires, when they're hot, they flex. You're less likely to pull the rubber off of it because it's not going to tear. Like you warm it up and it's not going to tear as much. It's going to bend. It's going to flex. You got it cold and you whack the throttle open. You might not spin the tire, but it's going to tear for sure.
So I'm going to ask Kyle, anyone ever try nitrogen for tires? And the answer is yes. And all the top teams in MotoAmerica using nitrogen, at least in the rear tires, if not both. And the reason for that is it doesn't expand as much with heat. So it's a lot more predictable on, what kind of rise you're going to get in pressure as you add heat. So we have a nitrogen tank on my truck and we do our own.
You do? Okay, so you get them back from Dunlop, deflate them, and then fill them back up?
Yeah, or we have them, not inflate them after they beat them up, so that we can just fill them with nitrogen.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that. I mean, like everyone is going to say air is some high percentage nitrogen. I don't remember what it is, but it's water content really and consistency, right? Like no matter how good the water filters are from the air compressors that Dunlop uses, it's still like if it rains and it's raining right then, there's going to be more moisture in the air. You're going to get more water in the tire, and it will be different. You will get a different rise and likely a different hot track temperature based on what you set it off the warmers.
Yep.
All right. It's about 100. No, Nick, air is not 175% nitrogen. I know you know that.
Hashtag science.
Hashtag science. Oh, man.
All right. Last call for questions.
Yep. YouTube comments, ready, go. You have... and I think you're about 5 seconds behind what we're seeing.
It's not bad. It's pretty nifty.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
All right.
What's the sickest bike you've ever ridden at a track day, not a race?
Oh.
You ride that Suter V4 two-stroke that they made recently?
No.
People were asking about that earlier.
Probably the coolest thing. I don't know. I got to ride. This was actually cool. It was Larry Pegram's 2008 Formula Extreme 848. So full superbike forks and crazy engine and overbore and all sorts of wild. It was a middleweight class, but with superbike rules, you could do anything you wanted to them. So that was pretty memorable.
I mean, they lost to Honda though that year, right? With the CBR. I only remembered that Honda kind of took over Formula Extreme as the class they wanted to win in that era. Yeah. Tell us about Kyle. Tell us about the new Army levels. You are ready to announce any of that yet?
Yeah, they're not released yet. Three KW Army levels this year. Keep up with it. We'll let you know.
I'm joining. I'm getting at least a hat this year for sure. I missed it last year. Any other hobbies growing up that were non-motorcycle related?
Very much a musician.
What'd you play?
Well, I played drums for 9 years, and then I was in honor band with the saxophone, alto and bari, and I even took some time on trombone, clarinet, and then picked up guitar when I graduated and played a lot of guitar. And there goes Rob. Let's see.
You know what this is then.
What do you got? Oh, yeah, I do know what that is. That's pretty awesome. For your trumpet?
No, the trombone. Trombone as well. I totally missed it.
But I couldn't really get into the brass instruments. I was more of a reed player. So
I started on the piano, played the clarinet 1 year in elementary school, and then switched to the trombone, and then played that until junior year of high school, I think, or senior year. I also was on the swim team and played water polo in high school and in junior college. Or not water polo, just swimming in junior college, not water polo. You can probably tell based on this that I was a terrible water polo player. Because I'm not 6'3", 195. So
Yeah.
oh man, switch to the trombone. Title of Rob's sex tape. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
New swing arm, new subframe, rework tank. Anything else new coming for the V4R in 2020? Unfortunately, the only thing I have to say about that is I'm not getting a new swing arm because that's one of the things that got cut out of the budget. I can't afford it.
Because
So,
you got to borrow one last year. That's what it was.
Yeah, I still got that one. That's the cast one. The billet one, I can't. I can't quite get that. Maybe mid-season, but the biggest expense. I'm buying an RSP 40 shock. So the
what's
only
the
Superbike shock is like it's $8,000.
Is it through
It's
rod?
actually more than the swinger. That's the RSP 40, 40 mil stacks and stuff like that. So it's the full Superbike shock, and that's really kind of the next thing before a swing arm. We're still on like a $1,000 TTX Pro, so like we need to get with the times and get on the real deal shock. So that's one of the things we're doing. We're testing some different rotors, different brands of rotors and stuff for the brakes. We're going to the full Corsa triple clamps, so spending some money there, but we still get as much length as we need out of the current swing arm we have, even though it's their older version. It's like 6 versions old, but like we'd just be looking for like different flexing out of the new one. So like since we can still get the wheelbase we want, we're gonna stick with what we have to start the year.
They just started racing this motorcycle and they've already made 6 swing arms.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane.
And in fact, the date code on the swing arm that is loaned to me is September 2017, before they ever announced the V4 existed.
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? They would make a couple before they started racing, just to figure it out, and then they would make a couple more during the season. That's insane. I'm actually surprised. Isn't the price cap for swing arms 10,000 euros? I'm surprised it's cheaper than that. Because that's kind of how all this stuff works.
That's once you get everything else going, all the carbon parts that it needs to cover this part, and then the mounting for this and that, it definitely
it
goes up. So.
Everyone loves hearing about your V4R. I mean, I wouldn't say because of novelty, I guess, just because you set out to do something that no one else had the balls to do, and ran with it, and it sounds fucking amazing.
Yeah. Somebody asked a little while ago, what do you think about Celtic HSBK taking one on? I said that's cool.
It's not going to change your program. It might have changed the tech tape for the day.
Might have. Yeah. But
we're not sure. Ruben asked if you run Ohlins or K-Tech on the deck. You run Ohlins.
I do.
You stopped running K-Tech like halfway through the previous year on the R1.
Halfway through 18, yeah.
Yep.
K-Tech forks, as somebody pointed out, they said like, let me pick a number 1 to 100, and then you can give you those K-Tech forks. That ain't gonna happen. Sorry.
I bought an Olin shock, and it was a very good decision.
Do you think it's a good idea to introduce yourself as, hey, I am Kyle Wyman, I race motorcycles, or do you think it's cooler to let that come to the surface on its own?
I think it's cooler to let it come to the surface on its own, or at least wait for people to ask what you do.
I'm definitely not like, no, that's like sitting on an airplane. Right? Like, what do you do? Oh, I'm the account manager for a plumbing company. You're like, oh, I race motorcycles. Cool. It's like you're always going to get a follow-up question if you say you race motorcycles. It's always kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I will admit there was one time I was just not having a good day on an airplane, and somebody asked when I did, and I just said I'm in school.
Oh, really? You were? Yep. I mean, I read your review of the entire season. I'm sure there were a couple of plane rides that required that.
Yeah.
Just a few. But 2020 is here. All right, everyone. It's been an hour and a half. I'm sure you would oh, Jen said they read your hat and then ask about it, which makes sense.
And on that day, I probably would wear a different hat.
God damn it. God damn it. Yes, Tyler, you missed the rear brake thing, but it's okay because you can rewind. What was easier to dial in, the K-Tech or the Olins? I don't know if that's a valid question.
Yeah, that's a whole tech tape.
That's a whole tech tape.
Let me just say, Olin's at the time, every other R1 on the grid was on Olin's, and we could all share data. So that was a big draw. You know, as far as like hardware goes, like one better than the other, not really. It's really the network of information.
I bought an Olin shock from Ken Hall, and he brought it to Barber. Ken Hall is an Olin suspension tech at MotoAmerica. And like after the session, he'd come over and be like, "Yeah, I got a couple of guys doing this, and they seem to like it. And there's one other guy that tried this, and it didn't really work out. So you should think about going in that direction." It's like, yeah, solid. Let's do that. It's just there's so much more confidence when in your tuner, in the setup that you've got, and everyone can attest to motorcycle racing being a lot about confidence. I mean, sure, it did also make the motorcycle better. Actually, thank you, Kyle, for that. Let me borrow that spring again.
You got it.
It was very helpful.
Somebody asked, how's the neck? That's a good question. I'm tackle that real quick. Got my
oh yeah,
scar here. So
that's it, huh?
Yep. 9.5 weeks out of surgery for artificial disc replacement. So I had full numbness down my whole left arm and everything from a herniated disc. It was killing me at the end of the season. And they went in the front, moved everything out of the way, dug out my C6, C7 disc, and then put in a nice titanium with a plastic puck as like a ball joint. So my neck is now partially artificial,
bionic,
and all my pain is gone.
It's
amazing.
Like watching they always publish an animation for like these not experimental, but for the surgeries and stuff. Like the fact that they had to fuse two metal plates to your existing vertebrae to hold the plastic thing in between is just
it's really just pressure of the vertebrae being like they spread your two vertebrae apart, they put the disc in, and then they just let the pressure compress it, and then it just kind of grows into the bone.
Yeah, so the that was most of your healing time, right? Was the bone actually like essentially attaching itself to the two metal plates that
because I mean I feel better than I did all of the second half of last season, but I still can't ride until February 14th, so I got another month.
Yeah, spinal surgery. I guess that's one of those ones where you definitely listen to the surgeon for how long it should take to heal. You break an arm, you go back whenever you want. All right, everyone. Like the one female listener they have, what? There are plenty of women in here. They just, for some reason, don't show up in the analytics for YouTube because YouTube is stupid.
Don't go to YouTube and watch the surgery. I did it before I had it done, and that was a bad idea. Bad idea.
Goddamn. All right, everyone. I'm going to call it at this. Thanks for joining Rob's Tech Tape. If you missed the live stream and you're listening to this on the podcast, thanks for listening to the podcast, but maybe you'll catch it next time. I'm going to try and publish these links ahead of time once I figure out all this stuff. And we'll definitely get Kyle on for a couple more. And he's joining us for the regular podcast too. I don't know, Kyle, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just sit around all day, so like I could do this every day. I don't have anything going on.
I mean, you can help me with my job. Do you want to try that? And then never mind. I don't know why I said it. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you later.